Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about Azure's fundamental storage services and security for TD3. So for today's agenda, we're going to be talking about the storage services, creating a storage account, services and redundancy, security and authentication, and then just some upcoming events. So for storage accounts, there are four main types of storage accounts supported by Azure. You have the standard, premium block blobs, premium file shares, and premium page blobs. So today we're going to use the standard one. They're supported by all the redundancy options. The other three are not as important for us, but I'll just expose them to you. So for the premium ones, just know that these ones have a high transaction rate. So this is for usage that's going to be very high, but also you want to make sure, because it's so high, that the latency is going to be low. And also the other one is premium file shares. So this one's the only one that's supported by a network file system and also SMB. And then you have the premium page blobs, just supported by page blobs. That's it. But we're just going to use the standard one for our purpose. And then specifically for endpoints, all you have to know is when we create our endpoint today, you're just going to have a specific unique or just a unique name, not a specific name, but unique. So it's between 3 to 24 characters, and you're just going to have to enter something unique. Otherwise, it won't create the storage service. So there are three main types of storage redundancies. You have LRS, locally redundant storage, which is what we're going to use. You have zone redundant storage and then geo redundant storage. These all go by price. So the cheapest one will be LRS, and then the most expensive one will be GRS. So why do we have redundancy? Essentially, if something happens to one of your services, you want to make sure the other one is duplicated in case something happens. So let's say there's a natural disaster or some sort of hurricane or earthquake, and it disrupts or interferes with one of the services that's supposed to be provided. So that's why we have a secondary region that'll allow us to have our work and replicate it. So that allows for the high availability aspect of Azure. And then the other trade-off I want to mention is when you have high availability and you want to ensure that things are safer, it's going to cost more. So here, this is LRS. You're only making smaller copies within the storage account. Here, you're putting each copy within an availability zone. So this is more protected, but it's going to cost a little bit more. And then you have the GRS, geo replication. So this intertwines with multiple regions, not just one. And all the copies are within a storage account as well. So these are the five main benefits I would want you to know. So because of Azure Storage, it's accessible, manageable, scalable, it's secure and durable, but also the highly available part. You could think of it like this. It's going to be accessible because it's going to be accessible for multiple regions. And we have that redundancy part to secure it as well. And then it's managed, so we don't have to do any of the hands-on configurations. And the scalable is the flexibility aspect. Going back to it, you can also put it into any of the data centers or availability zones. And then durable and highly available, it'll always be available as long as it's managed in Azure because you'll be replicated. So if something happens, you'll have another place to put your storage. And then here's one of the types of storages that's pretty important. It's called Azure Blob Storage. So it's Azure storage system that's basically meant to hold lots of data. It's unstructured data. So there's no restrictions on what type it can be. So it doesn't have to just be like an integer or string. It could even be an image, or it could be some long, lengthy string. So there's no restriction on the length. So that's the meaning for unstructured. So the files of Azure Storage System and Queue Storage. So no, it's shared access. Again, those NFS and SMB protocols, fully managed. So we don't need to worry about managing our own hardware or OS scripting and tooling. Those are the PowerShell command line prompts we've been working with. Resiliency, again, that's that highly availability piece we just discussed. And then familiar programmability. So Azure's Queue Storage. This is usually meant to use for a backlog of work processes. So this is where you would store large numbers or messages. And then we're gonna do our first exercise. Okay, so for this exercise, we'll just go Temple AS website, go under Technical Development Workshops. You're gonna hit sign into Azure portal. Oh. Okay. So, oh, that's not good. I'm already okay. So for you guys, you'll most likely be signed in with your sandbox. And you'll have this notification saying no subscriptions, blah, blah, blah. So we'll click that. If you don't get that box, let's just go back to the home, hit the gear icon. It'll do the same thing. You have to make sure you hit switch on your Temple University account. Otherwise, you won't be able to create the storage account we're going to make in this exercise. So similar to TD1, we're going to make a resource group first. So either here, click resource groups. Then we're going to hit create. I'm going to call it A1. Make sure the subscription is Azure for students and that it's just East US. We're not going to give it a tag for this resource group, but it's going to validate everything and it's going to be successful. So we're going to hit create. Now we'll go to our resource group, even though we were just there, but we can see that it's configured and it's given a specific to our specific subscription ID. The subscription is Azure for students, and it's not deployed to anything. And you could even see the JSON pairs made. There's our subscription ID, what we gave it, the location, and that it's created. But it's not deployed in anything. So now we'll create the storage account. So we're going to hit create. Make sure it's A1. I'll call it Azure. Oh, wait, no, you can't do names. I'll call it TD3. We're going to stick with the V2 standard account, but we're going to make it LRS because that's the lowest cost option. We don't really need to change any of the configurations here because we're not touching any of the security. We're just going to keep it public access and the REST API standards. We don't need to touch the access tier. We'll just make it public. Don't need to worry about data and encryption or tags, but what we're gonna do is, yep, it's LRS TD3, and it's specifically the most important part. It's attached to that resource group, but I feel like seeing how we deleted the other one, you guys should automatically have that one pop up. And then we're gonna hit create. We're gonna wait for it to deploy. And then going back to that unique identifier, it needs to be between 3 to 24 characters when you give it a name. So it gives it 24 characters. Hence why you have all these numbers later. And then, yeah, just telling you about cost management alerts, but we have enough credit. We would not have to worry about that. And we're going to delete this soon. So here's just an overview. And you can see if we go to the resource, it says it's attached to this resource. You can see that it's standard performance because we chose V2. It is the lowest cost option. It's locally redundant. So it's specifically in that region only for redundancy. We didn't give it any tags, and we didn't really touch any of the properties. So the networking is pretty standard. Same with the endpoint types. And you could see these endpoint types in the JSON view, if I recall. Yep. You can see all 6 of them. And that also shows you the other properties. We didn't really touch any file service or blob services. So yeah, that's pretty much it. You can see the latency. It's not really much latency. So now what we're gonna want to do is we're just gonna delete this, but don't delete it yet. What I want to see is go to properties. I just want to see a screenshot of this and submit this. Okay. So we'll delete and type TD3. We're gonna delete this now, so I don't want anyone to have any costs occur later on from like a couple years. So now that that's deleted, we'll go to the resource group, make sure that's deleted. Type A1, delete, and it's deleting that as well. Okay. But it was deployed, which is good. So we'll go to the home. We'll go to storage accounts just to verify that it's deleted. You know, the resource group's deleted, it says, which is good. Storage account is not deleted. Oh, it just deleted. Okay, good. Or I just had to refresh the page. So yeah, that's about it. All right. Now here are some of the services. Just know what they're called, and basically they're pretty self-explanatory. So Azure Migrate will help you migrate to the cloud. Azure's Data Box is one of those migration services used in Azure Migrate. So it's used for large amounts of data. And then Azure File Sync is used basically to centralize your files. So I wouldn't really worry about that. For those of you who want to take the certification exam. And the directory server. Okay, Azure's AD external identities. Basically, you want to know that this first one is the business to business collaboration, and the bottom one is the business to consumer collaboration or customer. So what Azure is doing here is we're using those AD or that directory service as mentioned before, and it's allowing us to deploy those applications to the cloud. And as partners, vendors, just the business side of things, we're working with migrating that service to the cloud and setting up the configurations needed to the client. So how is this done? It's done through conditional access. This is another security thing. Now, looking at this is a little obscure and it's not a great way to describe it. But basically, we're going to take these signals and Azure's going to make a decision and it's gonna give this enforcement of like, or basically verification I'd rather use other than enforcement of allowing access or denying access to a resource. And this is how I like to think of it. So Azure's AD, it uses those identity signals because back here, it's passwordless authentication. It's just as secure as multi-factor authentication, but it's more convenient. And what it does is it allows access to the resource for the business or customer based on those identity signals. Now, if we're going back again, I mentioned this is for developers or IT admins here. Also have the users and subscribers, but mostly IT admins and developers. And this allows them to be productive wherever and whenever, because you're allowed to work on your application wherever and whenever. And using conditional access as a security measure is a way to protect the organization's assets. So that's how I would like to think of it. I would think of it as a way for you to, or Azure's way of allowing you access or denying you access to a resource based on those identity signals with the passwordless authentication. And again, this is just how the cloud would work. It would obviously protect your assets, and it would allow you to be productive wherever and whenever without worrying about security. Now, continuing with security, Azure has a zero trust model. In this, it assumes the worst case scenario. So let's say it assumes someone breached your application or your data. It just assumes that happened, even though your request to access a resource wasn't verified correctly. So it expects the worst case scenario out of this. How this works is there's a layers. Obviously, the data will be the most important, then the application, how you compute it, networking, perimeter, identity access, physical security. It will not let you access any of the data or applications or any of that until you bypass the physical security, verifying that it's you. There's a lot of documentation that goes around with this in each layer specifically, but I'm just gonna touch on what this is, and you can go through the fundamentals page if you want to go through each layer. But basically, just know that it assumes that there's a breach, and it will ask you to verify, assuming that the worst case scenario has happened, just because it doesn't trust that you're not verified as the correct user. Hence the name, the zero trust model. So the Defender for Cloud, this has 3 vital components. So you have continually assess, which is, these are all security measures, but it's just going to continually identify and track vulnerabilities. So that's another security measure, along with secure. So this is kind of like a benchmark, just to make sure all the services provided on Azure's part for security are progressively getting stronger, as there's also a need to increasingly secure your application and data as things become more complicated. There's also going to be people who are becoming better at hacking to get into your application or data assets. So that's where the security part comes in. And then defending, basically just resolving threats to any workloads or services. And Azure will do this for you. This is, again, part of that fully managed process. So now we'll touch on the announcements. So the eBoard information session, I would highly recommend anyone interested in the eBoard to join this. It's on a Wednesday from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. in Ultra 33. What people don't realize is you can apply to multiple positions on the board. You don't have to apply to one, and you'll be considered for all of them. And a lot of people don't know what each position is, or they just assume that this role isn't part of this track, or this role does this, but there's other components to each role. I think it'll be very good for anyone interested in joining the e-board to join. Um, I would say come with questions. I know a lot of you are interested in joining the e-board. Um, so just know that that's coming up. Then you have community service too, the cards for kids. We haven't decided the location, but that'll be the Thursday at 5 p.m. And then for this TD, just submit it on Canvas. There's only 3 questions. And the first one's a file upload. Make sure you upload your screenshot I asked for. Um, Otherwise, I won't give you credit. Other than that, just know that there's only 3 questions. The fourth question I do want an answer for, but it's not really related to this TD specifically. Just I want to know what other topics you want me to touch, because this semester was the first time we ever did something certification wise or anything that built on each TD. And it's kind of hard because a lot of you do 2 out of the 3 tracks. So I had to make them as independent as possible, but also cram it into a short TD. So if you have anything interesting you want me to do, let me know. I know some people want to do Python or C. I can do that. If there's anything else, just put it in the text box and I'll look at it. So just make sure you submit that on Saturday by 11:59 p.m. Then we had the last speaker series. I would come to this one. It's one of my mentors from PepsiCo. Just briefly, but he was in the data science chapter. And I think this is interesting because we don't hear a lot from data scientists. So he'll have a lot to speak on and how he continues education, because he did start as a business intelligence analyst. But he did have a software engineering background. But I think this is a really good speaker to attend. So just know that that'll be the Monday, December 5th from 12 to, the Monday, December 5th from 12 to 1 p.m. in Alter 33. And then for the deliverable, again, just submit this on Canvas by 11:59 p.m. on that Saturday. If you have any questions, just email me. And yeah, that's it. All right. See ya.